Hello and welcome to the Grammaticus tutorial on compound words. Today we're going to look at this very common type of question that comes up on the Lincolnshire Verbal Reasoning paper. Compound words are probably something that most of you are quite familiar with. They often come up in literacy at school, so most of you should be quite familiar with the concept of compound words. However, the compound words that appear on the Verbal Reasoning paper often aren't as straightforward as those that you might have looked at school. Let's have a little look at some examples before we start to tackle the question. Now, a straightforward example of a compound word would be straw and berry. If we put those two words together, they make the word strawberry. That's a nice, straightforward compound word to spot. Now, unfortunately, in the exam, they're not all that straightforward. So let's have a little look at some of the cunning things that they do to hide compound words and make them harder to find. Well, one way they do this is to have words that actually separately they sound completely different to how they sound when we put them together. If we look at these two words and we look at them individually, we've got the words rat and her. Now we can say rat, her doesn't sound like a word, but if we combine them together in a different way, we can hear the word better. Now the way that the word's being split, we're sort of breaking the syllables here. So we're saying rat, her. But if we try splitting them somewhere else, we can hear that the word sounds differently. So rather than saying ra, if I say the word ra, and then I roll the T and the H together rather than saying them separately, and it makes a sound. So we're running it into rather. Rather is a word. So we need to be aware that often words that end in S or C or T, and if they're followed by an H, are going to make a sh or th sound. So we need to be aware of those, and those are common combinations that they do to make a compound word that's trickier to see. We've also got to consider what words sound like and how they change if they are at the end of a word or at the beginning. Let's look at an example of this where it actually changes. If we look at the word off and the word ice, if we say them as they are, off ice, it doesn't sound like a word. However, this ending here, ice, when it's on the end of a word, it often sounds like is, office. So we've got to consider how we can say the word in a different way. Now, all of these things are very important. They're all important concepts that we've got to remember. You might also find that they try and trick you with spellings. For example, we might have car plus pit. Now, if you put those, it sounds, when you put those together, carpet, that sounds like a word. It sounds like the floor covering that you might have in a room. But carpet isn't spelt like this. Carpet is spelt car-pet. So even though a word sounds correct, we often need to check that it's spelt correctly, because this is a good way that they check your spelling skills as well. So do be careful, do watch and make sure that words are spelt correctly. Okay, let's have a little look at our tutorial sheet for today, and let's see if we can spot the compound words in the questions we've been given. Okay, then let's have a look at question 1 to start with. Now, you can see that this is set out very similarly to a verbal reasoning answer sheet rather than a verbal reasoning question sheet. I've chosen to do the tutorial sheet in this way on purpose, because this is a question type that it's often easier to complete it straight onto the answer sheet rather than completing it first on the question sheet and transferring your answers onto the answer sheet afterwards. You can speed up the whole process. If you're struggling, however, though, to find the answer, I would suggest that you do all your working out on the question paper. Please do not write or mark the answer sheet in any other way, all right, because it's read by computer, and it's important that you haven't got any more marks on your answer sheet other than the marks in the boxes next to each of the words. Okay then, let's go through then and let's see if we can spot the correct compound words that we've got here. Well, I'm going to take lemon to start with, and I'm going to try it against each of the words I've got over here. So I've got lemon bow, lemonade, lemonade. Now straight away, lemonade sounds correct. Now if I look at the spelling of that, and I am going to just write on my answer sheet, even though I've mentioned on the real thing you wouldn't write on the answer sheet, you'd write on the question paper, just to illustrate this for you today. If I write the word lemonade down like this, you can see it doesn't look right. Even though it sounds correct, it doesn't look right. So I've got to discount that as a possibility. Lemonade, that doesn't sound right either. So I'm going to move down to rain, rainbow, raymade, rainate. Now rainbow sounds correct. I'm going to just write it down and just check, and you can do this on your question paper, and I can see that rainbow is correct, so I'm going to put a line across the box next to rain and a line across the next to bow, which is what you would do on the Lincolnshire answer sheet. Let's have a little look at the next one. Well, I've got ear her, ear ink, ear nest. I've got car her, car ink, car nest. And I can see here I've got a word that ends in a T. Now, if you remember those examples we looked at, we said if we've got a T and a H, we've got to make sure that we think about rolling these words together in a different way, thinking where we're going to make the break in the words. Well, I can try part her, path her. Well, none of those sound correct. Part ink, part nest. Well, at the moment, none of those sound right at all. So I think I've got to just think about where I could split these words in different ways. Well, I'm going to start with ear to start with, and I'm going to think, okay, if I put a H on here, would that work? Would that change how this sounds? Ear. Well, I don't often get R and H together in a word anyway. Ear, rink, still isn't sounding like a proper word. Okay, I've got an N here. Now, if I put the N with ear, I can see that that's changed the sound of that word completely. It's now changed the ear to earn, earnest, earnest. That's a compound word, earnest. So I can mark ear and nest on my sheet, and then I can move on to the next question. Cap time, cap art, captain. Well, captain sounds correct. I'm just going to write down captain and check and see if that looks right. Well, no, it doesn't. Captain has an A in it. Captain. I'll write that down. You can see the difference now. So although it sounds correct, it isn't correct. So there's no way I'm going to mark that. I'm not going to be caught out by that. Poor time, poor art, portin. Well, I know that if I put a W on the front of that, it would make it wart. Parwart. Still isn't sounding correct at all. He time, he time, he art, hettin, heating. Heating, heating, hettin. No, none of those sound correct at all. Now, you probably noticed that I changed how I pronounce the word he. I thought about it as he and as he, because if you think about the word hello, rather than having a longer E sound, it has a shorter E sound. So I've got to often think about how words sound. It's a bit like the office. We looked at the ice, but we've also got to sometimes think about how words at the beginning might change how they sound when they're combined with another word too. Well, none of those are sounding correct at the moment. P and T and W and T don't often go together. We've tried captain time and we've tried captain. W and T don't go together, so those have sort of been discounted, and we've tried saying parwort and porwort in lots of different ways. So my attention's been drawn really to the he here. Hetime, well, that looks sort of as though it could be a word, but it's not a word that I've come across before. He art, heart. I can see now that I've put the he in front of it, I can see the word heart. I'll just check by putting the he in front of tin, but I can see that the word I've made, he art, is actually the word heart. Now, if all else fails, I suggest you use this method here of putting each of the words next to the second word, and then often you see it. Okay, let's have a little look at number 4. Well, straight away, looking at the second words, I can see I've got ice. So I'm going to remember that that could sound like is. Often, well, that sounds like a word. Often. But looking at it, it doesn't look correct. If I look at it again and think about how I do spell the word often, I can see that it only has one F in it, so I can discount that. Off-bread, office. Office sounds correct, and if I write that down as well, I can see that it's spelt correctly, so I can mark both of those on my answer sheet. So that shows really on compound words, I've got to be careful. I've got to make sure I don't get caught out by spellings. I've got to think very carefully how words sound when they're combined together, and look for the sound and the sh sound and the ch sound. I hope that's been helpful. There is a worksheet attached to this tutorial that you can have a go at completing on compound words, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Bye bye.